Hello and welcome to today's message. And it's all about taking your rightful place. This encouraged me so much, y'all. Like I've been reading just I feel like it's throwback. So many throwback stories. And just if you can relate to this, let me know where when you go back and you reread something that you maybe have read so many times. Like I read out of the book of Joshua so many times, but it's like just different parts are standing out to me now. So what I'm reading from today is First Kings, and I won't get all deep into it. So I would encourage you to read for yourself, just because I don't want these videos to take like 2 hours. Because I will sit here and read the whole thing because it's all just so good. But what I want to encourage you on today is if you've been feeling disappointed, or if you've been feeling like someone else has taken the spot that you know God promised you, or vision that God has given you, or a word that has been spoken over you, and it looks like someone else is taking your spot, this is going to encourage you. If you are dealing with that, this message today is going to encourage you so much in that area. So again, if you want to read along with me, I'll be coming from First Kings chapter 1 and 2. And that's it. So go ahead and grab it. I'll be right back. You got about 10 seconds to grab that, and we'll jump into today's message. Okay, so I'm going to start from verse 5. I'm just going to read verse 5 and then kind of skip around. But like I said, if you want to get the whole message, then definitely read this for yourself. So then Adoniah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself, saying, I will be king. He assembled chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. His father had not confronted him at any time by asking, why have you done this? He also was a very attractive man, and he was born next after Absalom. So at this time, David is getting old. I'm just going to break this down for y'all, but if you read it, you're going to be able to get the story yourself. So David was old at this point, and it was time. They knew like his days were numbered at this point. There needed to be a new king. So Adoniah took it upon himself. It said he exalted himself. He was attractive. He fit the bill. He looked like this was supposed to be his role. But while he was doing all of this, here comes Nathan. This is verse 11. Therefore, Nathan spoke to Bathsheba, the mother of Solomon, saying, have you not heard that Adoniah, son of Haggith, reigns, and David our Lord does not know it? And so he's bringing her the inside scoop. Here's Nathan giving like the update, giving that insight that they didn't even have. Like, wow, David, the king, isn't even aware of this. Do you know that someone else is coming and trying to take your son's rightful place? And so first of all, I want to encourage you all that when something is happening behind the scenes, a lot of times God will give us the insight. It's up to us to be in our prayer time. It's up to us to be in right alignment, to be connected with the right people. It was through her connection with Nathan, the prophet, that she was able to find out about this. So I talked about beware of false prophets. That's actually a video I just put out. So go check that out so that you can discern who's even worth listening to. But this was so good to me because the prophet brought the word to Solomon's mother, Bathsheba, and let her know what was happening, that they weren't even aware of it before it was too late. So it goes on that he encourages her. He gives her instructions. So I want to just break this down just a little bit to encourage you all today with what stood out to me. The first thing is that when Adoniah started celebrating, he looked like he fit the part. It makes mention that he was this attractive man. So it might look like that person that is in quotations taking your place. It doesn't matter what place that is, a role that you know God has called you to be in, and it looks like this person is taking that role. Maybe you think they're more attractive, or they're more qualified, or they're more this, they're more that. And they have the nerves, like Adoniah, to even be boastful in that role, to even kind of taunt you in the role that they've taken that was not theirs to begin with. So that's where we find ourselves. But then the prophet steps in, and this is that piece of just trusting God in the process, and seeking God and praying to God and having discernment as he's revealing things to you, so that you can have a heads up when these things are unfolding, even if they're unfolding without your knowledge and behind your back. So the prophet comes, again, we're at the point where he comes to Bathsheba to let her know, like, look, they trying to take your son's spot. I'm giving you the heads up. But then he came with instructions. And we see this time and time again. One of my favorite stories is that of the woman, the widow with the vessels, where she went to the prophet, and immediately the prophet gave her instructions. And so in this case, Nathan gave her the instruction. He said, go to the king, You need to make him aware that this is going on. And you also need to remind him of his promise. So if you read this, you'll see what I'm talking about. But he encouraged her to remind the king of his promise. Like, don't forget, you promised this. You said that Solomon would become king. But as of right now, it's not looking like your promise is going to be fulfilled. Adoniah has 50 men running before him. He's cutting up the choice meat. He's celebrating. He's already proclaimed that he's king. But when Bathsheba carried out what Nathan told her to, and then Nathan also said, and when you begin to tell him that, I'm going to show up. So you won't even have to do this on your own. We're going to call it out, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to be there with you so that we can remind King David of this promise. And then Nathan shows up, and he's reminded of the promise that Solomon is supposed to be king. And what's so beautiful to me, if you keep reading, you find that while Adoniah was over there celebrating, they are all getting ready for him. It reminds me of another story I'll talk about in a second. But he's doing all this celebrating. Then in walks Jonathan like, hey, y'all didn't hear? David actually just made Solomon king. And I believe for many of us, these kind of circumstances unfold in our life where you think someone took your place. They have been celebrating. They may have even said some rude stuff to you, made fun of you, or made you feel less than. Meanwhile, God is working it out behind the scenes. While they were over there celebrating, Solomon was elevated to his rightful place. That person on the outside, it may look like they're prospering. It may look like they have taken something from you that God promised. It was his promise. However, when God's hand is on it, in the background, things were still working out, even though, and I think about this from where we can get stuck in the natural and the supernatural. When we see things in the natural, it's like supernaturally, God has given you a promise. You've received confirmation. You've had dreams. The word confirmed it. All these things, your faith is being built up. However, it looks like someone else is about to take that role. But when we're seeking God, he can just do things in the supernatural, and then they take place in the natural. So even when it's not looking like it for a minute, it wouldn't have looked like Solomon was about to become king naturally. However, supernaturally, God was working things out behind the scenes. Nathan, the prophet, was sent there to make them aware of what was happening. But what was most important was the obedience. And oftentimes, God has given us instructions to carry out to inherit the promise. And this, again, happens like several times over. So another example that I thought about was of the person celebrating and it looking like they're about to win is that of Haman in the story of Esther, where he just knew he was about to take Mordecai out. Meanwhile, the very thing that he was setting up to take Mordecai out, while he's celebrating, thinking that he was about to be elevated, his enemy, Mordecai's enemy, Haman, actually ended up having to perish on the very thing that he thought he was going to take Mordecai out with. So then when we get back to this point, again, that person might be celebrating, but when God is working something in the background, it's so important that we're obedient to whatever those instructions are. Like Esther, they were instructed to do the fast. Like the widow that I talked about with the vessels, she was instructed to go out and collect as many vessels as she could and start pouring the oil. Then she was instructed to go sell the oil, and then she was going to be able to live off of that oil for the rest of her life. I would encourage you to think back to the last instruction that you know God has given you. Because when we think about inheriting that promise, another thing that just encouraged me so much, I talked to you all about the story of Joshua, another good read. I get I get so hyped off of these stories. Like, look, y'all got to read Joshua. I feel like I was watching a movie when I was reading Joshua. But there was a point where they were getting ready to cross over. And as the children of Israel were getting ready to cross over, well, not actually after they had crossed over, they were taking out territories. And then it came to the point where they were to divide the land. And then there was a certain point where many of them still had not inherited the promise. And it was like, it was kind of like at that point, the ball was in their court. It's like, why haven't you inherited the promise? I already told you it was yours. Get up and go get it. And that's what we see here with these instructions. Nathan was like, he didn't say, all right, Bathsheba, just go into the corner and hope and visualize that it's going to come to Solomon. He said, get up, go to the king, remind him of the promise. So for many of us, that instruction, whatever it is, that's between you and God. And I would encourage you, if you don't know, to go to God in prayer. But whatever that last word of instruction was, you just don't understand how important your obedience is. At times we can be praying and begging for something and getting frustrated. It's not happening quick enough. It's not coming soon enough, when God has already given you the instructions. Literally giving you the instructions. For some of you, it's get your house in order, get your physical home in order, get your temple in order, get your body in order, start eating clean. For some of you, it is be quiet, stop gossiping, stop talking about people. For some of you, it's consecrate yourself, get off of social media, stop just letting any and everything enter into your eye gate, your ear gate, listening and watching any and everything. I don't know, because what we all struggle with is different. What God is speaking to us is different. The woman with the vessels, that wasn't the same instruction that Esther was given. Esther instructed her people to stop eating. She said fast for 3 days. The woman with the vessels, it was about action. Go gather the vessels. So whatever that thing is that God is speaking to you, I just want to share with you today, they're not going to take your place. It might look like someone else is in the very role that God promised you. It might look like they have succeeded and there's no room for you. It may look like it's too late, you miss your opportunity. But I'm telling you, when God has given you a promise, even if that person is proclaiming whatever they want to proclaim, like Adonai said, he was like, I'm king, y'all come celebrate with me. He was celebrating. And in the middle of his celebration, he was humbled. And not only that, this was the beautiful thing too. Adonai was afraid of Solomon. When he discovered, in the middle of his celebration, trying to take Solomon's spot, when he discovered that Solomon had been elevated to his rightful place, Adonai was afraid. And there are people that it looks like they got all the confidence in the world. It looks like they've taken your spot. It looks like, and I think about this too, even in relationships, where God may have given you a promise in that area, and it looks like someone else is taking that, or it looks like someone else is going to get that person's attention, or whatever it may look like. Whatever it is, I'm telling you, keep God at the forefront. Seek God. Sometimes we're going after things that God never promised in the first place, and that's why it's not coming to pass. But when God has promised it to you, you will be surprised at how many people, they know they have no business being there. They're literally shivering. They're shaking because they know they have no business being in your place. However, if we shrink back and we get out of that place of obedience and we don't do what God told us to do, like how Bathsheba stood up and took what was hers, what was rightfully her son's, if we're afraid to do that, for all you know, it may be like lightning speed. He was still celebrating when Solomon was elevated. Adonai was still celebrating. So this person or thing or whatever it is that may be in the role that God has promised you, they might very well be celebrating right now. And even in the middle of their celebration, you're going to get put into your rightful place when you're obedient to what God is telling you. So I just want to encourage y'all with this message. I know it encouraged me. So hopefully it was encouraging to you. If it was, tell someone, tag someone. And the best thing that you can do, if you're wondering, how can I support? Subscribe here to this channel. That's one of the best ways that you can support what's going on here. And I plan to put like more content out and just encouraging words as I feel led, and really just sharing with you all as I'm reading some of this stuff. It's encouraging. It's so encouraging, because sometimes we can get our eyes so focused on what's happening around us. And if it doesn't look like the promise, we get discouraged. And that is why I just thank God for this blessing to be able to come on and encourage those of you that need some encouragement, because sometimes we just need to be encouraged, like literally just a word of encouragement. So I hope that that's what this was. If you want to stay connected with me, you can do so across social media at Erica Empowers. And if you have a message, if you're someone, you have a desire to speak, you want to be a speaker, you want to get your message out on more platforms, maybe you have questions about how you can operate as a kingdom entrepreneur, then I invite you to join me. I have an event coming up shortly. Actually, I have two events, a speaker summit and my Born to Soar conference. So if you're interested in being a speaker and getting support and training around speaking, you can go to standonyourstory.com to apply there. And if you want some tools and support, you can go to increaseyourvoice.com. I feel like that was Gotta start throwing 1,000 websites at y'all. But yeah, go to standonyourstory.com if you have a powerful testimony that you want to share, and I'll get connected with you. All right, that's my message for today. I hope this blessed y'all. I hope it encouraged you to go take your place. So, like, literally, for some of you, this may be a 24-hour shift. This may be a 7-day shift. It didn't take long, but it was all about Bathsheba's obedience. And obviously, it was Nathan's obedience to speak up with what God was showing him and what he had the permission to say at that time. So y'all be obedient. Go do it. Whatever it is, don't delay. Don't procrastinate anymore.